Well, hello, my dear friends. Justyn Smith here. Welcome to another broadcast. Welcome to our Through the Bible messages. Today we are in 2 Kings 7. The windows of heaven were opened. The windows of heaven were opened. Now, there's another passage in the Bible that deals with this on a literal understanding of when we give, God opens the windows of heaven spiritually. So we focus on the action in life that we are to bring. In this particular story, we're going to see how God opened the windows of heaven and provided for his children in a unique and wonderful way. Notice point one, it was a time of great need. It was a time of great need. Verse 1, 2 Kings 7, Then Elisha said, Hear ye the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, Tomorrow about this time shall a measure of fine flour be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel in the gate of Samaria. So he is speaking a prophetic word. He is causing the people to hear the word of the Lord. It is a time of need. And so what we are reading in this verse is that things are going to completely change the next day. He's causing them to hear the word of the Lord. Tomorrow, it's going to be different. Fine flour is going to be sold. Measures of barley are going to be sold. This is according to the word of the Lord. And the people had a choice to believe it. They were in a time that was hard, but God was about to open the windows of heaven. God was about to change things. They were about to understand the word of the Lord is true and righteous altogether. Therefore, we point out point 2, there was a Lord who didn't believe God. Verse 2. Then a lord whose hand the king leaned answered the man of God and said, Behold, if the Lord would make the windows in heaven, might this thing be? And he said, Behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof. And so notice how this Lord, little L Lord, who had the ear of the king, notice how he did not believe. Behold, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, might this thing be? Kind of like criticizing, doubting the Lord, not believing in the word that Elisha is bringing. And how many times have we seen this in the scriptures? The word of the Lord is given, people will not believe it. Or we see the opposite. People believe the word of the Lord. People believe the word of the true prophet. Elisha responds back, hey, you're going to see it with your eyes, but you shall not eat thereof. What a statement. Psh, Elisha, who are you to speak to me like that? Don't you know who I am and the position I hold? Well, Elisha could have responded the same way, really. Don't you know who I am and the position I hold? We don't see him doing that. We just see him prophesying the truth, which leads to point 3. The blessings were realized by 4 undeserving men. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, these 4 undeserving men are lepers. Lepers had boils all over their body. They were very contagious. They made leper colonies. This is the place where the lepers would live until they would die. There was no help, no hope for them. People stayed away from them. In fact, a leper had to call out, unclean, so others who were clean knew not to come that way, or knew not to come that way, yeah. So now we read verse 3, 4, and 5 to understand that they realized the blessing of God. There were 4 leprous men at the entering in of the gate. And they said one to another, Why sit we here until we die? So they're having this conversation. What are we doing with our lives? In verse 4, if we say we will enter into the city, then a famine is in the city, and we shall die there. And if we sit still here, we die also. Now therefore come, let us fall into the host of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we shall live, and if they kill us, we shall die. Now think about that for just a second. We can't go into the city. There's a famine there. If we sit here at the gate, we're going to die here. We might as well go to the Syrians, okay? Maybe they'll keep us alive, or maybe they'll kill us. That seems to be our lot in life anyways. Notice the next verse. They rose up in the twilight to go unto the camp of the Syrians, and when they were come to the uttermost part of the camp of Syria, behold, there was no man there. These 4 leprous men are part of this story of how God is going to reveal himself in that day. These were undeserving men, but God is going to work through them. Number 4, God was at work through the enemy's hearts. God was at work through the enemy's hearts. Let's notice the scriptures, verse 6 through 9. The Lord had made the host of the Syrians to hear a noise of chariots and the noise of horses, even the noise of a great host. And they said one to another, Lo, the king of Israel hath hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come upon us. Wherefore they arose and fled in the twilight and left their tents and their horses and their asses, even the camp as it was, and fled for their life. And when these lepers came to the uttermost part of the camp, they went into one tent, and did eat and drink, and carried then silver and gold and raiment, and went and hid it, and came again, and entered into another tent, and carried thence also, and went and hid it. You get the picture, guys. These 4 undeserving men are now living the dream of their day. We were now thinking we're sitting here until we die. We could go into the city and die. We can sit here till we die. Let's go to the Syrians. They went to the Syrians. Oh, they became spoilers. They're spoiling the Syrians without even have to fight them. They're going to the tent. They're eating their food because the Syrians left everything as it was. They're taking the treasures. They're hiding them. They are making a living. It's a big time life they're living now. They were lepers. But now they're living the dream. Notice verse 9. Then they said one to another, We do not well. This day is a day of good tidings, and we hold our peace. If we tarry till the morning light, some mischief will come upon us. Now therefore come, that we may go and tell the king's household. Guys, we got to change what we're doing. We're not doing right. We need to go spread the word, because if we don't go spread the word, we're not going to have the help of our people. They're not going to know, and we're going to have mischief fall upon us because we're still here when the enemy realizes nothing really happened. You see, God knew how to work in the enemy's heart to cause great fear, and therefore the enemy left. 4 undeserving lepers came on the scene, and they are enjoying the benefits of God's goodness and scaring off the enemy. The windows of heaven were open in a time of famine, which leads to point 5. The news of God's provision was spread around the nation. So they came and called unto the porter of the city, and told them, saying, We came to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there was no man there, neither voice of man, but horses tied and asses tied, and tents as they were. And he called the porters, and they told it to the king's house within. The lepers got to be witnesses, testaments of the goodness of God in their situation, which leads to point 6. The Lord blessed as he said he would. Now, I have several verses to read through before the close of the message. Hang on with us. It gets real good. It says in verse 12, The king arose in the night because of the words of the lepers, and said unto his servants, I will now show you what the Syrians have done to us. They know that we will be hungry, therefore are they gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the field, saying, When they come out of the city, we shall catch them alive and get into the city. And again, you have to imagine this is because they're not believing the word of the prophet. One of his servants answered and said, Let some take, I pray thee, 5 of the horses that remain, which are left of the city. Behold, they are as all the multitude of Israel that are left in it. Behold, I say, they are even as the multitude of the Israelites that are consumed, and let us send and see. So they're trying to figure out if these things are true. Verse 14, They took thereof 2 chariot horses. The king sent after the host of the Syrians, saying, Go and see. And they went after them unto Jordan. And lo, all the way was full of garments and vessels, which the Syrians had cast away in their haste. and the messengers returned and told the king. So it's like they're abandoning ship. They're getting rid of things that don't mean anything except the salvation of their lives. In verse 16, the people went out, spoiled the tents of the Syrians. So a measure of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. You see, the Lord had changed things. The Lord had caused a provision to be met. The word of the Lord was correct. And the king appointed the Lord on whose hand he leaned to have charge of the gate. And the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died, as the man of God said, who spake when the king came down to him. And so all of this is in fulfillment of what God said he was going to do, even with those who didn't believe him. And it came to pass, as the man of God had spoken to the king, saying, 2 measures of barley for a shekel, and a measure of fine flour for a shekel, shall be tomorrow upon this time in the gate of Samaria, that the Lord answered the man of God and said, Now, behold, if the Lord should make windows in heaven, might such a thing be? And he said, Behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof. And so it fell out to him, for the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died. He received this judgment as a fulfillment of being one who did not believe the word of the Lord. In this passage, we see that literally the windows of heaven were opened by way of provision in the people of Israel's life in a unique way. Okay, God caused fear in the heart of the enemy. The enemies ran, they scattered. Let God arise and his enemies be scattered. And God used 4 unlikely, undeserving men to bring this attention to the king. And likewise, God uses us who are so undeserving, sinful men, to spread the message of where the feast of heaven can be found in the name of Jesus. We can point people to the Lord. The windows of heaven can be opened according to the word of the Lord for the influence of God. You and I can be greatly used to cause unbelievers to believe in the message that is from God. Thank you, my dear friends, for listening to 2 Kings 7. I pray that you know the windows of heaven to be opened in your life. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for click and play. We'll see you on the next broadcast. All glory to God.